I mean, that son of a bitch, you know, is really unbelievable.
Mr. Son of a bitch.
I mean,
Mr. Son of a bitch.
His royal. Yes, yeah, no, I never imagined that we'd ever have a president like this, and I hope we don't ever have another president like this.
Thing to talk about. Kimmel was given each one of them was given a reset except for Seth. I didn't even know he was still on the air.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody did. Everyone's watching Forensic Files.
Yes.
No one's watching Seth.
One of the greatest shows ever.
Yeah, but these guys, they had opportunities to reset. Kimmel could have came back and tried to be funny again, or bring guests again, or show any kind of change, but they're really gonna ride this out to the last drop. What are they gonna do when he's gone?
Tyrus just pulled a move no one saw coming. He called out Jimmy Kimmel, and not with a whisper, but with the kind of fire that makes headlines and turns heads. The late-night titan might be chuckling on screen, but behind the scenes, he could be tossing and turning. This unexpected showdown feels like a heavyweight bout between a no-nonsense ex-bouncer turned truth-teller and a Hollywood staple who's made a career out of cracking wise, often at others' expense. So, what line did Kimmel cross this time? And why does it sound like Tyrus is ready to suplex the entire entertainment elite? Strap in.
It's not the party, it's not the majority, it's the loud voices that scare people from saying what they believe and make you think twice about a joke or whatever, you know, these things. And, you know, a lot of their points are valid, but a lot of them are also just repulsive. And I mean, they repel people from, they go like, oh, you're no fun, I don't want to be a...
Before we dive any deeper, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Trust me, you do not want to miss where this is headed. Tyrus has officially entered a new ring, and this time, it's not about body slams, it's about bold statements. The man who once tossed bodies like rag dolls in the wrestling world is now hurling knockout punchlines. And his latest target? Not a muscle-bound rival in tights, but someone with a mic, a studio, and a late-night audience.
They're going to be with Rosie O'Donnell in a 4-way Zoom podcast about Trump ruining their life still.
I'm glad you didn't stop at 4-way. Although in my head I can see it.
Come on, man. My mouth was up.
Nope, it wasn't a muscle-bound rival this time. It was the crowned prince of late-night fragility himself, Jimmy Kimmel. Hollywood's favorite court jester. A man so cozy with cue cards, you'd think they were handwritten love letters, and so familiar with moral high ground, he's made a hobby of falling off it.
I have one ex-wife. That's it. Okay?
Yeah, you tell
I had some scruples. Okay? I'll have one-night stands, but I will not marry people I don't love, okay? There's certain lines there.
You can't teach this cracker that.
And somehow, this feud didn't even feel like a fair fight. On one side, you've got Tyrus, a human wrecking ball with the swagger of someone who's just as comfortable throwing down in a wrestling ring as he is throwing shade on live TV. On the other, there's Jimmy Kimmel, the guy who once teared up on national television and tried to pass it off as hard-hitting journalism. It's muscle meets melodrama, and things are heating up fast.
I think if they're going to continue to do a podcast, they need to bring their writers in. Ooh. Because that was brutal.
Terrible. They're out of touch.
It's like listening to two billionaires complaining about no one had change for their $100 bill at McDonald's. You know,
The internet caught the scent before the first shot was even fired. You could practically hear keyboards warming up. This wasn't shaping up to be some friendly back and forth. No, this had all the makings of an all-out brawl. Think less playful jab, more digital street fight. A celebrity showdown where the punchlines were sharp, the egos sharper, and one side came armed with memes instead of muscle.
3 ex-lovers.
Yes.
Who just found out about each other. Mm-hmm. And they're all getting together to talk about the man they all still love.
Right.
And they're just sizing each other up, trying to figure out which one of us has the best shot to get back with him.
Yes.
They all get together, they compare notes, and they tell each other, yeah, you should never mention his name again. You should never mention his name again. You should never, does he call you? Doesn't call me? He texted me last week. Oh, so I'm still in the game. That's all this was. That's just, and that's why nobody cares.
Enter Jimmy Kimmel, armed to the teeth with Hollywood smugness and a teleprompter stacked with one-liners that feel like they were crowdsourced straight from Reddit threads and filtered through a writer's room echo chamber. He's polished, rehearsed, and ready to take his usual swing, smirking behind studio lights, delivering jokes that land softer than his applause signs suggest. As always, he's eager to mock, but never himself. The stage is set for another performance dripping in self-righteousness, cloaked in virtue signaling, and padded with the safety net of a cheering audience. Then comes Tyrus. No frills. No forced laughter. No cue cards. Just grit, truth, and a verbal steel chair straight out of a pay-per-view takedown. And when he swung it, you could practically hear the Hollywood ego shatter from the glittering streets of LA to the snarky corners of late-night Twitter. Tyrus didn't just clap back, he unraveled the whole performance. He exposed the illusion, the everyman comedian who hasn't lived like one since gas cost less than a morning latte. Kimmel's turned mockery into a mission, pretending punchlines aimed at average Americans are some kind of activism. But the only injustice here? The stale comedy. Because recycling the same tired jabs at conservatives isn't brave, it's just lazy. And eventually, even the studio audience gets bored of clapping on cue.
So annoyed. All I had was a crisp 100. They had no change. I was like, what is this world coming to? That's why I'm moving to Italy, girl. I know, me too.
Great.
Like, it's just...
Can I say something?
Tyrus saw straight through the smoke and mirrors of Hollywood stagecraft. He didn't speak up for clicks or clout. He spoke up because someone had to. Someone had to say what millions were already thinking, that Kimmel's idea of punching up looks a lot like mocking blue-collar Americans from the comfort of a climate-controlled studio, sipping overpriced Pinot Noir under lights paid for by sponsors who still think Twitter is a personality trait. And when Tyrus spoke, it landed differently. This wasn't a polished soundbite from a think tank or an algorithm-chasing influencer. It came from a man who's clawed his way through the mud, who knows what it's like to earn every inch without a safety net or a standing ovation. No script. No PR filter. Just truth with grit. Suddenly, Kimmel's carefully curated persona, the funny guy with a heart, started to look more like a Halloween costume that stopped fitting. The mask cracked the moment someone outside his echo chamber dared to challenge him. And let's be honest, when a guy who used to prank strangers on live radio can't handle a little pushback from a Fox News regular, you know the irony isn't just thick. It's practically doing stand-up on its own.
One government crossing guard goes,
How did you feel watching Kimmel cry?
one of his tears fell out. Hold on. You know, it's funny how this derangement's working, because it only seems to work if you have a camera in.
And the fans? They erupted. Social media didn't just react, it exploded into a full-blown gladiator arena. One side roared, Tyrus just body slammed Hollywood into next week, while the other scrambled to defend Kimmel by resurfacing blurry clips from 2003, desperately arguing he used to be funny. Spoiler, the archive was thin. But this wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a cultural collision. The echo chamber of polished, self-congratulatory Hollywood met the hard edge of someone who doesn't play by its unspoken rules. Tyrus stepped in, metaphorical folding chair in hand, grabbed late-night TV by the collar and basically said, "Try laughing at yourself for once." And for Kimmel, that's like asking a cat to sit through a cold shower, pure agony. Especially when you're used to delivering moral lectures dressed up as punchlines. That's why the moment struck a nerve. It wasn't mean-spirited. It wasn't personal. It was a spotlight on hypocrisy. Tyrus didn't come for blood, he came with a mirror. He reminded everyone that the guy who once mocked Hollywood's elite has now become one, sitting comfortably in a mansion built on punchlines aimed at people he stopped relating to years ago. And that moral compass? It's spinning wildly right toward whoever's footing the bill for tonight's monologue.
Ex-Wife's Club.
Yeah.
You know, they just sit around, be funny, or they're setting up for when they're all canceled, their tour, their three-man show.
Yes.
Come watch us say how much we hate the president.
At this point, even Hollywood had to shift uncomfortably in its designer chair and admit, Tyrus kind of had a point. It was like watching the class clown suddenly realize everyone's laughing at him, not with him. For years, Kimmel has coasted in a carefully curated bubble, shielded by studio lights, laugh tracks, and an audience trained to clap on cue. But when someone like Tyrus calls you out raw, unfiltered, and unbothered, there's no applause sign big enough to save you. You could feel the energy shift. Fans started stacking Kimmel's scripted, teleprompter-polished monologues against Tyrus's off-the-cuff truth bombs. And let's just say, it wasn't a fair fight. Picture someone tweeting, "Hey Jimmy, maybe try smiling more and roasting fewer truck drivers next week." And once the internet caught that scent of weakness, it was over. The memes landed harder than any joke Kimmel's told in a decade. Tyrus didn't just win the exchange, he hijacked the storyline. That's when the spin machine kicked in. Suddenly, Kimmel's defenders were scrambling. Tyrus is just bitter. Right, because nothing says bitter like calling out the Emperor for strutting around in last season's punchlines. The man's been recycling the same jokes for so long, it's starting to look like Earth Day in a writer's room.
The funniest thing about this whole thing is they act like he got into the White House, and right as he got in, he's like, your list that you wrote for him, for people to go get. It's like, ICE, here they are, go round them up. No one gives a frog's fat ass what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because if they did, they would have stopped that podcast immediately.
Right. Yes.
What's really hilarious is how this feud ripped open the fragile line between comedy and activism, something Kimmel's been tiptoeing across with his eyes firmly shut for years, acting like every punchline is a heroic rescue mission. But Tyrus? He just rolled up, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Nah, man. You're not saving the world, you're just saving your ratings." And as always, the internet went wild, blowing the whole thing up into a full-blown cultural showdown. Suddenly, this wasn't just a simple call-out, it became the fight for the very soul of comedy. Fans started picking sides like it was the latest Marvel blockbuster. On one side, the Hollywood elite, who believe humor needs a moral permission slip before it can even land. On the other, everyday people tired of being policed for laughing at the wrong joke, longing for comedy that's raw, honest, and unapologetic. Tyrus stood for that second camp. His words weren't just aimed at Kimmel, they challenged an entire system that confuses arrogance with intelligence and mistake condescension for wit. The audience noticed. Ratings don't lie. People aren't tuning in for preachy monologues dressed as jokes anymore. They crave truth, even if it's rough around the edges. And Tyrus? He's the embodiment of those rough edges. No polish, no filters, just unfiltered reality. And that's exactly what makes this clash so electric.
Expected to walk into work, stepping over, crying, to your credit, libtards.
Yes.
Like, oh, excuse me, up tear.
Yes.
There we go. But it wasn't. Everybody went back to their lives.
Yeah.
So apparently the only way this heartbreak works is if you film it or force someone else to film it.
Right.
But to your point about Carson, we never knew his political affiliations because he was there to make everyone laugh, all the late night shows.
And that's exactly the thing Hollywood just can't handle, someone who refuses to play by their rules or care about fitting in. Kimmel's whole persona depends on being liked, on keeping that safe, polished image that guarantees applause. Tyrus? He couldn't care less. That's why he wins by default, because authenticity always cuts deeper than rehearsed charm. But did Kimmel get the message? Nope. Instead, he doubled down on his trademark smugness, like someone trying to extinguish a wildfire by pouring gasoline on it. His response was classic, pretending he's too elevated to engage, even though the cracks in that act were as obvious as a ratings dip. Because truth hurts, especially when it's delivered with a punchline sharper than your network's falling numbers. Even neutral viewers started catching on. Kimmel's comeback sounded like tired reruns, overcooked, stale monologues read by someone who's forgotten what it means to actually connect. Meanwhile, Tyrus reminded everyone what comedy used to be: dangerous, bold, and unafraid to challenge the status quo instead of coddling it. Watching Tyrus dismantle Kimmel's fake moral throne was like flipping the breaker in a room filled with fake, fluorescent light. Suddenly, everything felt raw and real. The best part? Kimmel's loyal fans didn't know whether to cry jealousy or denial. Some called Tyrus irrelevant. But you don't trend for days by being irrelevant. You don't send late-night execs into a panic by being a nobody. One truth, one punchline, and suddenly the whole entertainment machine started to glitch.
Went all in on ignoring reality and blames MAGA.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
So MAGA is desperately trying to portray Kirk's killer as not one of them. If that man was any more full of shit, he'd be a colostomy bag. That was 2 days ago, so Kimmel had the chance to walk it back, but he can't.
It's almost poetic, isn't it? Jimmy Kimmel spent years building a career out of mocking others, only to find himself at the center of the joke, and not the kind he ever intended. Every attempt he made to appear unfazed only revealed how fragile he really was. The internet doesn't fall for fake confidence. It sniffs out fear like a shark senses blood in the water. And right now, Kimmel's PR team might as well be waving the white flag. Meanwhile, Tyrus? He's completely unbothered, chilling, undefeated, probably scrolling through memes of himself literally body-slamming Hollywood, all with a grin. He doesn't need to officially win this feud because the victory's already baked into his swagger. When you live rent-free in the mind of a guy whose job is to make people laugh, you've basically already won the game. There's a beautiful irony here. Once, Kimmel's jokes carried real risk. They pushed boundaries. Now, he's playing it safe, recycling HR-approved punchlines, getting shown up by someone who doesn't hide behind a studio audience or a teleprompter. Someone who remembers what honesty sounds like. This whole saga felt like a cultural reset, a reminder that comedy isn't a one-way street. You don't get to throw shade and then cry foul when the shade comes back at you. And that, perhaps, stings the most. For all his jokes about resilience and humor in tough times, Kimmel proved the only jokes he can stomach are the ones he tells himself.
Should be fired because it was such a big, murderous election on one side that it should have been a reset. Because when it happened in 20, when he lost and Biden got in, I don't remember us doing an episode on coping skills. There was no line in the audience where I was like, thank you for coming. Thank you. We just like, well, let's keep going. And I believe we made fun of the situation and ourselves. So I always tell people, try to be the bigger man, which is ironic. But
impossible.
In this case, because the poor sportsmanship is coming from TV, normally I would say you can have one lap and smell your flowers, but go ahead and take it.
Tyrus didn't just leave the ring with a win. He walked away with more fans, more respect, and the undeniable satisfaction of shattering one of late night's biggest illusions. The illusion that fame automatically means wisdom, that money guarantees authenticity, and that coast-to-coast broadcasts render you untouchable. When it's someone like Tyrus calling out those myths, you know it's serious, because this man doesn't throw light jabs, he drops finishing moves. It's a perfect metaphor for where we stand today. As this feud simmers beneath the surface, one thing is crystal clear. Tyrus isn't just going after Kimmel. He's challenging an entire culture built on fake smiles, carefully curated compassion, and punchlines padded with disclaimers. Kimmel can keep his applause signs and teleprompters. Tyrus has something far more valuable, an authenticity that lands harder than any scripted joke ever could. And no matter how many monologues Kimmel churns out, no matter how often he tries to reinvent himself as America's beloved funny uncle, the shadow of this showdown isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
Last night, Jimmy Kimmel returned to his show and gave a self-pitying, tearful non-apology. But I gotta say, it's nice to see someone crying at Kimmel's show besides the audience. Kimmel failed to correct his lie that Charlie Kirk's assassin was a MAGA supporter, but he cited Jesus as inspiration for forgiveness. True, Jesus forgave his executioners, but Jesus also cast demons into a herd of...
Because it revealed a truth nobody could unsee, that when confronted with genuine realness, Hollywood crumbles faster than one of Kimmel's infamous cue cards. Sure, Tyrus called out Kimmel, but what he really exposed was the entire glittering circus, the hollow moralizing, the selective outrage tailored for ratings, and the dangerous myth that fame automatically grants your opinions more weight. He tore through that glossy illusion like a wrestler demolishing a flimsy cardboard prop, and the audience loved every second of it. In a world drowning in pretense and polished performances, Tyrus handed us something rare, a raw, unapologetic truth, served with a knowing smirk. Maybe that's why this isn't just another late-night scandal, but a cultural moment. A shift. The instant when one man dared to tell Hollywood's funny guy to take a seat, drop the act, and for once, just be real.